So we did the checkers board with display inline and display block, and we saw the differences between the two. But we usually use something else if you want to put multiple divs or elements in one row. And this is called display flex. And this is a very popular and useful CSS display property or value that we can use in our HTML. And once you understand it, you use it almost everywhere. This one together with display grid, which will be on the next lesson. So before showing you how to create the checkers board with display flex, I want to go over to Google, like always, and Google for CSS Flex, and I will go to the first result for CSS Tricks. It's a very useful website that talks about HTML and CSS. And in here, you have a complete guide to Flexbox. So when I'm saying CSS Flex or Display Flex, I mean CSS Flexbox. It's the same thing. And here they explain a lot about CSS Flex, which of course I will explain about it. But the reason I'm having this website here open is because I want to have it as a reference when I'm working on my code. So it's usually something good to have those type of documents open on your browser when you want to always jump back to the place where you can research and understand more about the features that you are using and the tools that you are using in HTML, CSS, and almost everything. Always reference to the documentation. Whether this is, I don't think the official documentation, but it's a very good documentation on CSS Flex. Okay. So what I want to have is I want to have a row of divs, right? I have 8 rows, and in each row I have those 8 boxes or cells. And I'm going to do something different other than using CSS inline. So I'll go back to the code, and I have my checkers board here. I will collapse it and comment it. The way I'm commenting, I'm using command or control, depending on which computer you're using, and then / or backslash. I'm not sure which one of them is the one next to the right shift. And if I will expand it, you see that it added this here and this closing here. And what it says, this is an HTML comment. Okay, it looks like code, but it tells the browser, ignore it. I can write everything I want here. I can also write HTML, but also free text. And I'm telling the browser for now, just ignore this code because I don't want it to be displayed on the web page. And instead, I'm going to create a new checkers board. And the way I'm going to do it now, just like I did it before, is with div, and this will be my checkers board. And I'm going to use the class that we created before. So we'll have the same background, and it will be also inline block, and it will have a border font size, even though I don't really need this font size here when using Flex, but I will do it either way. The next part, I want to create a row. So again, the row should take the entire row as a board row. So it should start at the beginning of the parent row, the beginning of this div, and end at the end of it. And the next part, I'm going to create 8 boxes. I'm going to use div.box. This is a shortcut for creating HTML in VS Code and other editors, but it's built inside VS Code also. It's called Emmet. So you can see I have this Emmet name here, and it tells me that if I will hit tab or enter or will click this option, it will create a div with class box. It's some kind of a shortcut. Another cool thing I can do with it, I can do times 8. Oh, sorry, 8. I'm telling it to create 8 divs that all of them has class box. We'll hit enter, and there I have it. It's a very quick way for creating HTML when you're writing a lot of HTML. And of course, that for some of them, I want them to be black. So I will just take this class here, and I will add box black to each one of them. I will go back, refresh the page, and there I have it. Okay. Now, one thing I'm going to remove, and I'm going to hide it, is I'm going to comment this also. Also, I'm using command / or control /, and it's commenting the code here in CSS. What it means to comment? It means that this CSS will be ignored by the browser. If you want to remove something or you want to add some free text, use comments. And as with CSS, I have this checkers, which is inline block. You know what? Let me remove all of this. Let me also remove the inline block here. Okay. I have this checkers, which is display block because I removed the inline block, so it takes the whole row. I have another div inside which also takes the whole row because it's display block by default. And inside of them, I have 8 different divs, which each one of them takes a whole row because it's display block. Even though the width and height are 50 pixels, because it's display block, it blocks the entire line, the entire row. Okay. And I want to put all of them on the same row. So, and I don't want to use display inline. The way I'm going to do it is with display flex. And let me show you what I'm going to use. And of course, from now on, I'm just going to use classes. So let's call it checkers row, for example. And this will be the class that will be applied to each row in the board. And we'll do display flex. I will, of course, if I'll just have it now, it won't affect anything. So I will need to add class to one of the divs. Checkers row. I even get an autocomplete from VS Code. Save the file, go back, and it already refreshed for me automatically. Oh, maybe I didn't mention it before. I'm using something called Live Server, which is an extension of VS Code, and this refreshes the page every time I'm saving the file. So it kind of removes the need to go back, refresh, and see the results. It just does it automatically for me every time I save the file. So Google for Live Server on VS Code, and you will be able to use it in your website. And what you can see, I have all of the divs in one row. See it here? So checkers row, one thing to notice here, it is still blocking. Okay, even though we replace the display block with display flex, the behavior of that, of checkers row, is to start from the beginning of the line and end at the end of the line. One thing cool or weird maybe about display flex, that it changes the behavior of elements inside of it. If display inline and display block change the behavior of an element and its surrounding, so instead of an element to take the entire row, it takes only the space that it needs, the space of the content that it has inside, or the fixed width and height that it has. When applying display flex, I'm not changing the behavior of how the div appears outside of it or how it blocks things around it, but I'm changing the behavior of the HTML elements inside of it. So even though this div, this box, it's display block, you can see here, it's display block. It doesn't take the entire row, doesn't block. And this is kind of weird. It's kind of counterintuitive to what we saw before, but it's very useful because when we're using display flex, we're actually telling the browser this element, in this case it's a div, but it can be anything. This HTML element, all of the elements inside of it are flexible. Okay? The behavior and the sizes of the elements inside are flexible. What it means they're flexible, if I will shrink what I have here, you see that all of the divs inside, even though they have width, you see that they have width 50, but if I'm shrinking the web page, they're taking less and less space. And it's kind of makes sense because it's flexible. I'm saying this div, this row, it's a flexbox. So everything inside of it, it's flexible. And if I'm expanding the page, it takes more and more space up until 50 pixels, okay? So if you will see here, all of them are up until 50 pixels. So this is the idea of display flex. And it's very useful. There are a lot of other features, of course, for display flex, but it's very useful if you want to use it in flexible web pages, pages that can change depending on the size or depending on the space that they have in a given context. I will continue this example. Let me add some more rows. So again, I'm going to use Emmet, div.checkersRow. And then inside of it, what I want is I want to have div.box times 8. So it will create, it even tells me what it's going to create, a row with 8 divs inside, maybe even further. Let's do it. And I have it. And I have box black. And I will do it, just copy it and do it 6 more times. Oh, sorry. I need the pairs. So let's copy it and do it 4 more times. And there you go. I have a checkers board without using inline, keeping them as they are, but using display flags for each row. Now, the second part is, you see here that each box is only taking 50 pixels. And if I'm shrinking it, it takes less, depending on the size that it has. I want it also to expand. So if it has more space, I want it to grow, depending on how much space it has inside. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add here to the box. I want to tell it flex grow 1. What it means, tells all of the boxes, everything that has box class to it, if there is more space in the parent div, in the Flexbox, if there is more space in the checkers row, take this extra space. Okay, let me save it. And you can see that now it takes the extra space. Even though it has width 50 pixels, which is the basis width, it takes extra space if there is any. And of course, if I will shrink, there will be less and less extra space, so it will shrink down. And if there is less space for everyone, it will shrink in the same proportions.